What if I told you that I believe that behind every action that we do is an emotion and a story? That emotions and stories carry us in our decision making, from where we move, what job we take, who we hang out with, who influences us, and also perhaps how we judge one another. And more importantly, when we judge one another, do we think about, before we make that judgment, do we think about that person's story and emotions that bring them to the action that we're judging, whatever the case may be? Perfect example here. This is an AI rendering of, it's supposed to be King David entering Jerusalem. And peering through the window is his wife. It's pronounced either Michael, Michael, or Michal, whichever one you want there. That's how that's pronounced. But I'll give you a quick story here. David is entering Jerusalem, and with him he has an entourage of citizens, people, religious figures, and with them is the Ark of the Covenant, the Ark of God, God's resting place that was given to them in the desert with Moses, and he's bringing it back into Jerusalem. He gets so overwhelmed on the way into the town that he almost kind of loses a little bit of control. He strips down to what is known as a linen ephah. It's a you remember what Scrooge wore to bed? Picture that without sleeves. It's kind of that. It's kind of like a nightie, kind of thing. It's a spiritual undergarment. A lot of people, when you look at the classic paintings and stuff, they just like to put him in his underwear, but it's kind of like that. It's that undignified as a king to be entering the town wearing basically his underwear. And to be dancing, he starts to get filled with the Spirit, and he starts dancing and shimmying. Now, this is a culture where, unless you're being chased, grown men didn't even run. But dancing was something that they might do occasionally, but the dance that he was doing, a lot of it had to do with like kicks and thrusts, and weird, kind of embarrassing stuff. Any Seinfeld fans? It's like Elaine, doing the, that kind of thing. Imagine if I just started doing this, do you see your respect for me starting to wane? Yeah, okay, thank you very much. So quick to answer that. Thank you, I really appreciate that. But he gets to this he's supposed to be the king coming into the town, and he starts to just do this little shimmy and jive and all this kind of stuff. And the people around him, some of them might be celebrating with him, but others, it could be a little bit odd. I don't know about you, but I've never wanted to see any of our presidents dancing in their underwear. I don't even want to ask if you prefer that or not. For me, I'm kind of against it. But this is what would happen if the kind of same similar thing here. It's like that, and David is doing this all over the place, and his wife, Michal, is looking through the window, and she's disgusted. Disgusted. She is not feeling anything other than contempt and anger for David because he is embarrassing himself. He's acting like a buffoon in front of people. And when David finally gets into the house, she says, "Look at you. What are you doing? You are a king and you are acting like a fool. You are, there are servants out there. There's commoners out there. You're supposed to be a little bit elite, and you're supposed to be this person of respect and power, and they're laughing at you because you are dancing like a moron. You look like a moron. No matter how much power you get in your kingship, you look like a buffoon, and that's what they're going to remember the rest of their lives." Immediately, because of David's action, she judges him harshly. She's made her decision of what he's doing. She calls him on it. That's it. And then David says, "I was caught in the Spirit of God I was so overwhelmed to be returning to Israel, to be bringing the Ark of the Covenant to Israel. I was so moved by that. And for me to humble myself before God tells people that I am not to be worshiped. I am not above anybody. And your servants and your commoners have a king that will worship God and one that they can relate to. Kind of puts her in her place there. So by just the look of somebody, she did not question his motive. She did not ask him why he was doing it. Imagine if we spent more time asking why. Why are you doing this? Before we judged, before we laid down that judgment of somebody, we had the decency and respect to sit down with them and say, tell me why you were doing that. Because what she could have done is when he came inside, she could have said, hey, I noticed the kind of, the jimmying and jiving there. Why were you doing that? And instead of him being defensive and having to defend his actions because he's being accused of being a moron, it could have been a very moving opportunity for him to share and welcome her into part of him. She could have said, why were you dancing? Why were you so moving around like that? He could have said, I'm so glad you asked. I was so filled with the Spirit. I was so filled with the Spirit to carry the ark into Jerusalem, to carry the ark into Israel, and to be part of this and be with God. I just felt so humble. I felt so humble that I had to humble myself. I didn't want to have any of my royal garments on or anything. I wanted to be just among the people and praising who we ought to praise. I want to be the king that sees God first and not himself first. And they could have had that moment. She could have said, oh, I get it now. I understand why you were doing that. I understand why you were dancing so much. As a matter of fact, I can kind of see myself doing it too. And maybe together they would have shared it a little jig. But instead, she just said, you're a fool and you're a moron. And they didn't get along after that. That's the story that we like to tell. Whenever we go down to 2 Samuel 6 and we put this into, that's the story that I'm supposed to tell, is that David was caught in the Spirit. He was moved by God, and she did not have the decency to respect him. She was the elitist. She saw herself above people, and he was embarrassing her. I guess we can pray now, because that's the story. Why didn't she ask him why? Can I get a little bit onto the other side of this? Why didn't he ask her why? We got two people judging each other here. She's judging him for acting like a twit. He's judging her for being judgmental. Yes, telling someone they're judgmental can be you judging them. Let's take a look at Michal's story here. David was anointed to be king when Saul was still king. Saul was the first king to be anointed for the Israelites. They wanted a king, they got Saul. Saul would grow to be so power hungry, it would start to make him paranoid. He would start to be jealous of anybody that was getting more attention than him, and eventually he would fall on his own sword during a battle he had no business being a part of and die. But during that time, because he kept screwing up, they anointed David to take over after Saul. And when David first started being a part of Saul's life, Saul loved him. Saul thought that this was an amazing person. He had feelings, he had care, he could play instruments, he could write poetry, but he could also be a warrior. And so to reward him, Saul gave him his daughter, Michal, to be David's wife. Do you hear what I'm saying there? gave him his daughter to be his wife. Does that sound like property? I hope so, because it was. When you were a woman in that time period, you had no rights of who you married. You were given to people. So, does Michal feel a little bit used at this point? To be used like a token, like a gift for somebody? Does she even like David? We never even asked that question or not. Now, I believe that anybody feel that every one of us, we have this sense of wanting freedom. You can easily say, well, this was the culture of the time. That doesn't mean she was happy about it. It doesn't mean she was pleased about it. What it means is that she was just pawned off as a gift, like if I gave you a watch. Instead, they gave women to be his wife. She was being used. And I suspect that even at that time, if you don't have the freedom, that you would yearn for that freedom. I believe that that's something that is even so deep within our soul that it connects us to that kingdom of having this yearning for freedom, and she did not get that freedom. David takes her as the wife, but while he's soon after, Saul's opinion of David starts to change. You see, people are getting to like David quite a bit, and Saul's quite threatened by that because the attention is no longer on Saul, but it's on David. His answer for that is to kill David. She protects him, hides him, and actually helps him sneak out in the middle of the night to escape the murder of Saul. So, she is given to him in marriage. She helps him escape, saves his life, and David never comes back for her. So now she's not only been given away as property, but she maybe feels a little bit used. Now you can say that David escaped and he went into the wilderness and he's in hiding, and that's no place for a woman. He was there to protect and all that kind of stuff. Well, he married 2 other people while he was out there, but he never came back for his first wife. And during that time, Saul is so bitter at David that he starts to hunt David. And just to get back at him, you know, like if you have a spat, well, I want my blender back. He says, I want my daughter back. And so what he does is he takes Michal and he gives her again now to another person. David's in my sore spot again. Okay, so I'm going to take his wife and I'm going to give her to him. It was a political move because this person was some kind of royalty and all that kind of stuff. And so the prize now was the wife to be given to this guy now. So now she's been traded twice. Twice. As property. As property. As someone that has no rights, and that whoever the husband or the person that she's been given to, she is a slave to. In those days, you did whatever the husband wanted you to do. So she's a daughter of a king, but she feels maybe like an object. A utensil. Definitely someone without freedom. And David never comes for her except years later. By this time, David's been married a couple of times. He's got a couple more wives and he's got kids. But his power starts to rise a little bit. And Saul, at this time, he falls and dies. And at this time, David is crowned king of Judah. The 12 tribes of Israel, you heard of the 12 tribes of Israel, they are at a civil war right now. They are split. There's Judah, but there's also the prize of Israel. David doesn't have that yet. He just has Judah. Saul's son is still in control of Israel. David wants to unite the kingdom. That's when they get the phrase United Kingdom. That's what he wants. And during this time, his power and popularity starts to rise, while Saul's son's power and popularity starts to fall. And it's during this time that David's starting to be able to make a little bit more demands. And you know how when you're at war with people and all that kind of stuff, you have a bargaining, and you have, you want this, and you start to fight over land and all that kind of stuff. That's when David says, oh, by the way, I want Michal back. Not because he missed her. He wasn't writing her cards. It's just because he wanted his property back. And the story about this is such a touching story, because it says when they took Michal, soldiers came and physically took this person as if they were moving furniture. They actually hired 2 guys in a truck. That's how demeaning this was. And they took her and they lobbed her into the truck. And as they are moving away, the second husband that she's married to follows behind weeping. This man actually may have truly loved her, might have actually truly respected her. You ever been in I don't know, I know that we have some people that have been divorced and stuff, in bad relationships and bad marriages, and then you finally get one that is respectful and is beautiful and everything, but because you're property, you are just removed from that. And this husband is following, weeping, crying, mourning the fact that his wife is being taken away, and the soldiers finally tell him that he needs to go back home. Like a lost puppy, he goes back home weeping. Could this have been the one time in her life that Michal was treated with dignity and respect? Could it have been the one time that she actually experienced a loving relationship? But because she was bargained off again, she's ripped from that again, and torn from that, and given back to David. Now, David was he was a man of God. He did a lot of great things, but when it came to relationships with women, this guy had some issues. He needed to learn a lot about respect and dignity. To him, Michal was a prize, and he got it back. And during that time, David's reign over Judah continued to grow. And then in the middle of the night, some people go to Israel, and they kill Saul's son, who is the king. And during that time, David is finally crowned the king of Judah and of Israel, making the United Nations back again. He's finally being able to bring that back again. And that's what leads him to march into the city with the Ark of the Covenant. And that's what brings him so overjoyed with the feeling of God, the feeling of victory, the feeling of the 12 tribes are back. They're united again. God's work is being done. And that's when we join the story and we judge her of saying, well, this is awful. But imagine if you lived your entire life with probably no respect or dignity. That you lived your life as a daughter of a king, but you were traded off so many times. We're talking 3 times now that she was just traded off. And imagine that you saved your husband's life, and instead of coming back for you, he goes away and marries more people and has more wives, and now you come back and you're part of a harem, whatever you want to call it. When she looked out the window and she saw David doing the was she upset because she was embarrassed, or was she feeling that maybe she was in a place where she could finally get some respect back? Because I believe that no matter how bad you're treated, you can say, well, it was the culture. We all want respect. We all want dignity. We all want that freedom. We all want to be treated like a person, and she was never treated that way. Maybe briefly when she was married to her second husband, but they ripped that from her too. And now here she sits in another house of royalty. Is she finally going to be treated with respect? Is she finally going to be treated with dignity? Is she finally going to be able to say, I am a person and not property? And that's when she looks out the window and she sees this guy that has showed her no respect, no dignity, that has bought and sold her like a lamp, dancing his heart out. Would you be angry? Would you say, where's the dignity here? I've lived all my life wanting this just to be treated with respect and dignity, and now you're acting like a fool. All I want is my dignity. You see, for years, we've looked at David and said, well, he has every right to dance around. And you know what? He probably did. He fought the good fight. He fought all the time. He was being persecuted against. He had people trying to kill him. He was trying to do God's work and unite the kingdoms. He finally achieved that. Yes, he had every right to dance. But she also had every right for her feelings to not be happy about the occasion and what he was doing. When we sit together and when we, instead of just judge one another, if we actually sit down and say, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? What if David actually said when they came in to the city, how are you feeling? You know, I don't know about you. It's not something I get asked a lot. And I can tell you that women in that time period probably never got asked it because nobody cared. But if he did, if he asked, how are you feeling? He would have opened a door where she might have even been able to say, you know what, my whole life I've just been treated like an object. I've been a slave to people. I've been forced to go here, forced to go there. I saved you from my own father who went insane because of his lust for power. You ignored me, and then you bought me back again, and now I'm here. They could have had that communication. That's when I want to play marriage counselor for them. I would have been there for a long time because David was a messed up person in that respect. First off, I would have said, one wife is good. If we just ask why. If we open the door to each other and ask why. Too many times we are just looking out our windows and we are just judging people at a distance by the way that they act, if it's not the way that we want them to act, if they're doing something that we don't agree with, or if they're looking in a different way or wearing a shirt that we don't particularly like, we've judged them completely. We never ask why. We're curious people, but our curiosity is being spent death scrolling over and over again, judging others. That curiosity was given to us by God to actually be able to talk with one another and learn about each other and go the layers below the actions. Instead of judging people as our enemy, learning about them and actually talking to them, we could walk away with friends. C.S. Lewis once said, and I know I'm misquoting this, but the beginning of friendship usually starts with one person saying, oh yeah, that happened to me too. Today we don't even ask to get that far. She had a right to be angry and he had a right to dance. If only each one of them knew why. And if only we knew why. Would you pray with me? Gracious and loving God, before we judge somebody on the surface, help us to have a curious mind. Help us to take that curiosity and want to learn more about that person. Help us to have the kindness to go beyond the surface and through the layers of what makes a person do things that they do or who they are. Help us to actually be empathetic to someone's emotions and stories. And if we disagree with an action, help us to try to dig deeper to understand. Maybe why someone has reached that conclusion, and maybe be able to respect one another enough to where we can even agree to disagree. But we can still love you, we can still love ourselves, and we can still love our neighbor. In Jesus' name, Lord, we pray. Amen.